screw bolt.
The Turnbull government got hit with another distraction today. Labor is accusing Attorney General George Brandis of misleading Parliament. Do that deliberately and a minister must resign. Now, Brandis had told Parliament he'd consulted the government's Solicitor General, Justin Gleeson, as he must by law, about a change he'd made, making even ministers now who want to ask Gleeson for legal help to go through George Brandis. Here is the problem. Gleeson has now said he was not consulted, and Labor has jumped all over it.
No amount of obfuscation or slithering around by George Brandis can conceal the fact that he lied to the Parliament, and he's still lying. Now he's lying about lying.
Now, where the difference seems to be is that Brandis did consult Gleeson about the problems he wanted to fix, about so many people running to Gleeson for advice, but he didn't consult him about how Brandis intended to fix it. But Brandis says legally he ticked the box marked consultation.
Long discussion with him about the issue. The consultation obligation under the relevant act was plainly met.
Joining me is the panel, former Speaker and Liberal Minister Bronwyn Bishop and former Labor campaign guru, Bruce Hawker. Bruce, did Brandis mislead Parliament?
Well, either Brandis misled Parliament or the Solicitor General has had a big memory lapse. I find it hard to believe that the Solicitor General would be so upset about this issue and be so adamant about it if Brandis had actually had a proper consultation with him. You know, apparently there were some notes recorded of the meeting, so I'm not one to be able to say definitively yes or no in light of that, but it's something that's worth further investigation, and maybe they should ask the people that made the notes of the meeting what actually was said, so that we get third parties in there to decide whether he did or did not mislead the Parliament, because that, as Bronwyn knows, is a very, very serious thing.
Well,
Bronwyn?
Well, first of all, I've never seen such a load of rubbish. Number one, George Brandis is the #1 law officer of the Commonwealth. The Solicitor General is number 2. The position of the Solicitor General is that of a counsel to the government, i.e. a barrister, where you go for an opinion. There is a requirement in the law that says that in order to get an opinion from the counsel, the barrister to the Commonwealth, you have to go through the Attorney General. And the Attorney General, in fact, made a legislative instrument, I suppose is the correct term, which made that, in fact, be the way in which it had to occur. There was another bit of regulation that said he had to consult, so he did consult. And there's a very splendid article written by Chris Merritt in The Australian today, setting out the document where the department has, in fact, put in writing that the consultation provision was met, and that the real person who has behaved badly is the Solicitor General, because what he has done is divulge information where he has spoken about matters dealing with other issues in public. In other words, breaking the confidentiality principles that are in the solicitor-client relationship. Now, I'm still a solicitor. I still have a practicing certificate, and in ethics of the law, that's Rule 101. So the person who should be considering his position is not the Attorney General, but indeed the Solicitor General. And as usual, Mark Dreyfus is in there, out there saying what a great hero he is and blustering on. And I have to say, when I was in the chair as the Speaker and I had to throw Mr. Dreyfus out, I have to say the opposition members look just as pleased as anybody else. He can be quite
well, he does do
insufferable,
Hufsterism even better than David Marr at times.
Well, I think he's pretty effective, actually. I think he's pretty effective, and I think Brandis is on the back foot over this thing. Let him bring forward the departmental or other officers who are at the meeting and let them decide what they're going to tell an inquiry. I think that's entirely appropriate when you have a he said, she said situation like this. Let them come forward and say what actually happened.
They did. There were 2 note takers.
No, but I think you've got both.
You always
that's
have
right.
somebody with you. Always. You would never see anybody.
And surely the notes speak for themselves.
Well,
of course they do.
Do they?
No, they don't speak for themselves, Bruce.
Well, I think you ask them to come in and say, well, what do they actually hear? Because you can take a note, maybe in good faith you think you're taking an accurate record of something when in fact you're not. Let them come forward and say what they actually saw and what they heard. I think that's an entirely appropriate thing, given that this is quite a serious issue now. As Bronwyn, as a former Speaker, would know, misleading the Parliament is something which leads to heads rolling.
Let me say, if you break that legal principle of confidentiality between solicitor and client or barrister, then you are in serious deep water. I have never
I agree with you, Bronwyn.
I have never seen any Solicitor General ever behave like this.
That's a digression and a diversion. I mean, that's just trying to...
No, but it's an important principle. Surely it's an important principle, guys, that if you've got someone that's the key to, you're a key legal advisor, and some of your conversations or whatever end up in the media, that's not good. I mean, it's very ungood.
Well, that may well be the case, but that's separate to the issue of whether Brandis actually misled the Parliament or not. You actually have to divide those two issues and say, well, there might be this issue relating to Solicitor General Gleeson and what he said and what he didn't say in regard to client privilege matters, and what was that Brandis said and or did not say to the Solicitor General.
Documented and given to the committee departmental record saying consultation took place.
Bring him out and let him answer questions.
Yeah, and I really think it comes down to. I really think it comes down to. It comes down to he consulted him about the problem. He didn't tell him what the solution would be, and maybe he doesn't need to either. He's the boss. Too bad. He's the boss. Now listen, the brawl. Exactly. The brawl about renewable energy, particularly wind farms. Bronwyn, how much trouble is South Australian Premier Jay Weatherill in here?
Huge trouble. In fact, I think this whole incident you could call the canary in the wind farm. It's really blown the whistle on really how bad it is. And when you've got ARIM, which everyone is trying to solve or to sell so that it can continue as a steelmaker, importing generators from all over the country to try and get an independent source of energy so it can keep the thing from proceeding and keep making steel. And the description of the danger of which those employees were placed in the blast furnace area, this is an absolute disgrace. Bottom line, ideology has ruled over every sensible equation or every sensible decision you could ever make. There is no redundancy in South Australia. It is reliant entirely on everybody else's base load, which comes from coal-fired power stations. And what happened is, when there was too much wind, it can't generate the electricity required. The drag on pulling it from Victoria was too great, and the transporter, I think is the term, went down. There was no planning for redundancy in that state at all. Now, in other parts of Australia, we've had bad storms or bad weather incidents. The whole state doesn't go down. Only in South Australia, their lead smelter is at risk. Now, I reckon if you'd had a plebiscite in South Australia and asked them, would you like a subsidy for the car industry or a subsidy for wind farms, how do you think they'd vote?
Well, the car industry subsidy was taken away by your government, actually. So I don't think that was a very appropriate thing to be, crowing about. Look, it's not a question of ideology. It's not a question of ideology at all. It's a question of a warming planet and what you do about those things. Now, it's all right for you, Bronwyn. You and I are well past our use-by date, and the world will be well and truly. You well and truly are, Bronwyn, but. The world will not. We will be gone before the world gets to a point where it's really getting hot.
I think you
Younger people are in a different position, and that's why governments have to do things about global warming. Now, if you start from the premise that the world is getting warmer and you have do something about it.
But it hasn't warmed for 16 years.
It is warming, Bronwyn. Only people who are blind to the facts, only the people who are blind to the facts are going to say that the world is not warming. It's continuing to warm. We had the warmest year on record across the planet last year.
Bruce, now, you're a true believer.
No, I'm just looking at the facts.
You're an acolyte in the religion.
I'm looking at the facts. Now listen, wait a second.
Warming.
Bronwyn, if you tragically became very sick and had to be treated, and you went to your doctor and they said, look, the best thing we can do for your cancer is to give you chemotherapy, what would you say? You'd say, oh, look, to the best science that's available, thank you very much, and if it's chemotherapy, I'll take it. Now, you wouldn't say that.
No, but Bruce,
you would not be going around saying those
two things.
It is
Hang on a sec.
It's about best science that's available.
Hang on a sec, Bruce.
Best science that's available.
Bruce, the point is, how do you stop global warming? You know, you're asking South Australians, hey, listen, for the sake of global warming, just stop the planet heating. You're going to go without power for a few days, and we're going to wreck our industries. Do you think that's a trade-off that most of them would accept, given that the cut in emissions from this green power would make zero difference to the temperature?
Look, I think South Australians are going to be very upset about the fact that a whole lot of transmitters got blown over in the worst storm in 50 years. Let's not deny that that actually happened. You can be a climate denier, but don't be a fact denier.
I take exception to that term.
Well,
you know precisely why you're trying to...
Most of them...
And the way in which you
most of them blew over after the blackout, Bruce.
Of that. That is a demonstration of that. And as I said before, you know, if you were ill, you would go to the doctor and ask for the best science available. When it comes to climate change, you close your eyes. You close your eyes to that fact. You close your eyes and you pretend it doesn't exist because you are being ideological about it, not the people in South Australia who are trying to stop the world
Bronwyn,
warming.
let me give you a chance to respond.
Thank you.
Let me give you a chance to respond. But before I do, Bruce, I must just point out that 15 of those wind towers blew over or were damaged after the blackout, not before. And what seems to be the proximate cause was 6 wind farms going off almost instantaneously. That's in the report yesterday. But Bronwyn, may I hear from you? The
bottom line is it is the responsibility of state governments to provide energy for their state, for their industries, for their people in lifts, people on roads, lighting, for the whole thing to work. The difference between a first world country and a third world country is reliable electricity. And when you have a reliable electricity, you can have a blossoming civilization. Now, in order to have that, you need redundancy. You need redundancy to ensure that when intermittent power goes down, you've got a source to pull from. And what South Australia has done is got rid of its redundancy and said we'll rely on everybody else. And because of the nature of intermittent power, it couldn't cope when it was faced with a storm which wasn't nearly as bad as storms that we've seen in other parts of Australia.
Well, it was the worst storm in 50 years.
And I will not accept...
87 kilometres an hour should not...
Worst storm in 50 years to hit South Australia.
It should not black out a
state. This panel is questioning that.
Australia.
No one's questioning that. Look, no one's saying that you can't improve the system. That's not what I'm arguing. I don't think anybody would argue that sensibly. What they're saying is don't use this as an opportunity to just go out and bash renewable energy, which is what you're doing, Andrew, and what sadly Bronwyn's doing.
I'm afraid
I am. I'm bashing it because it may have caused the state to go blackout. But listen, before we go, Bruce, here's an easy one for you.
Eventually, we might be here, but it will burn up. If we don't do something.
I don't think sending South Australia black is going to stop the world from doing whatever the world's going to do. But listen, the hearings this week with...
something to bash renewable energy with, because that is wrong and that's ideological and it's not fact-based.
Why do we get a feeling from the passion that this is we're talking about a religion, really? We're not talking about science, we're talking about religion.
We're talking about science, and it's the denial of science that worries me here.
Science is
it worries me when people deny science, and that's what you guys are doing. You know, you might as well go out and burn
no one has denied science.
Science is always open to being challenged.
Absolutely pathetic.
But in this area, no challenge is allowed.
You always be sceptical, but be very sensible about the way in which you go about it.
Well, Bruce, all right, look, you challenge the science, and I've said to you, I don't see the sense of turning South Australia black to stop the planet from doing what it's doing, because I don't think it makes a difference. If we're talking science, can you tell me, all the renewable energy that you're defending in Australia, by what percentage of a degree will that actually stop the world from heating?
It's the way,
so that people know the gain for the pain.
Andrew, it's about the accumulative
We're talking science
effect.
here, just talking science.
I don't have that number, and if you didn't go and look it up, you wouldn't either.
So we're not talking science.
But the point...
Yeah, I do have the number.
We are talking
I do have the number.
Of course, you went and looked it up on Wikipedia somewhere. Look, That's not the issue.
I've been
The
writing
issue
about
is-
it for ages.
Andrew,
No.
the issue is this. The issue is whether you're going to continue to rely on dirty old fossil fuels and see the world continuing to get hotter and
Emotional
hotter.
language is not
I asked you a
science.
scientific
after Bronwyn
question
was
and
gone,
no
well
answer.
after I'm gone,
Emotional
or
language
whether
is
you're
not
going to
science.
start
Okay.
to look at renewable energy as the way to solving the
Folks,
problems, which is
it's
what the
over.
scientists do.
Unfortunately,
I'm going to send you
That's
to
what the
East Anglia
scientists do.
University.
David Spears
Not
is
what the
standing by.
commentators-
If I
not the
eat into his
commentators.
time, I'm gone. I'll be
scientists.
sacked. The same to David Spears. He's on next. Bronwyn Bishop, Bruce Hawker, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
David Spears, as I say,